Hello, you're listening to Politics Uncensored with me, Zoe Grunewald.
And me, Ali Milani.
Coming up on today's show, Andy Burnham has pledged to revive the British High Street. We'll unpack what his new plans mean. Plus, the early prison release scheme is continuing to dominate headlines. We'll ask an expert how bad the problem of prison overcrowding is and what can be done.
As always, you can find us at Politics Uncensored UK on social media. But first, it's the week Unwrapped.
Today is the big day. Voters are heading to the polls in Clacton-on-Sea for perhaps the weirdest and most unnecessary by-election in a generation. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage threw his toys out of the pram and resigned his seat last month following scrutiny over his financial support. He said he hoped that the vote would silence his critics and prove he has a mandate amongst his voters. And a record 34 candidates are standing, presenting voters with the longest ballot paper in history. I'm so glad that we aren't Ofcom regulated, because otherwise we would have to list off all 34 candidates. I think it takes about 3 minutes.
And there's a lot of them. Yeah.
And they have ridiculous names. Like
how weird is that stage going to be? Because they're all going to get dressed up in funny outfits, and so I wonder if that's actually good. Here's a prediction. I wonder if that's going to be a defining picture of Nigel Farage's political career, in that if this is to be the end, right, if we're predicting, as I think you did last week or the week before, that he may be engulfed in one too many scandals, and we expect that the Parliamentary Standards Committee will resume their investigation once he wins, if he wins, and ultimately he's not able to pull out of this mess that he's in. I do wonder if that's going to be how everyone has a defining image.
Yeah.
Him stood in front of Elmo and Monster Raving Looney Man and Count Binface and Lord Buckethead. A
bit like Prince Philip. Actually, is this a horrible analogy? A bit like that photo of Prince Philip
in the car.
When he was toward the end of his life.
Yeah.
I think basically what that photo would show you is just essentially how ridiculous this whole thing has become. This idea that this is a referendum on Nigel Farage's ability to be an MP, how much voters have trust in him, that it is people versus the establishment. It's very, very hard to maintain that line. And he's probably going to do a victory speech saying, that is it, the people of Clacton have spoken, they want me to be their MP, and the establishment have tried to stitch me up. Well, it's not going to land if you have a badger and a bin and a fox and whatever else stood next to you. Like, where is the establishment in that? Yeah,
and it's not going... we might be back here in 2 or 3 months anyway, depending on what the Standards investigation finds. It's going to be really hard to hit the establishment when they're not behind you.
Yes. So what's your prediction then? Because I think Nigel Farage is almost certainly going to win. I suspect he will win. There will be the Standards investigation will reopen. And say the Standards investigation does decide that he's broken some rules and there is another by-election necessary. At that point, do you think he'd go?
No. I think he'd fight that by-election. And he'd probably win.
So what do you make of all these rumours, then, that he wants to find a way out anyway?
Out of politics?
Yeah.
It's not unlike him. He's thrown in the towel twice before, right? He did it right after Brexit, and then he did it partially through the Brexit Party. Given how much money surrounds him, I do think he's looking... How old is he? He must be in his 60s, right?
Yeah, probably.
I do think he's looking at a post-political life. You know what? Even as much as I despise the man, there is something to be said about the amount of scrutiny and pressure that he's constantly on. He's probably lost all anonymity, which isn't a nice thing, right? That level of fame. And in his 60s, he's probably knackered at this point. He smokes a lot, which doesn't help, and drinks a fair bit as well.
He's 62.
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised. Now that I've I wouldn't be surprised. What about you? Do you
know why I think he will go then? Because it's the perfect story for him to tell himself and his supporters. They've chased me out. They've made me ill. I've already proved this to them once. Yeah. Nothing's ever good enough for these people. This is a witch hunt.
And he can always say, I would have become Prime Minister if I'd chosen to stay. It's like professional people who are like, I could have been professional footballer if I hadn't hurt my knee.
And he'll frame it like, this is totally unnecessary. You've already just spoken. They're forcing it. They can't take the people of Clacton's will. They won't accept it. They won't take no for an answer. I can't deal with it anymore. It's making me sick. I'm leaving. And he will retire.
I'm still convinced, by the way, I don't actually know any of this. I'm convinced that he has forced this by-election for a different reason. There has to be there is something in the investigation, I think, that he was trying to there's some sort of time limit or something, because this move just doesn't make political sense to me.
I don't. I mean, it's possible. I think this was a last desperate shot in the dark. I don't think there was logic to it. I don't think there was a particular map strategy.
Maybe they think there'll be political pressure on the Standards Committee not to do a second by-election.
But I
don't think they'll care.
I don't think they care.
Aren't they just like nerds that are sat in a room somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this time next week we'll have an update. We'll know the results, but
he's going to
win.
Right.
Okay, let's move on to our second story of the week, which is Donald Trump.
This is
we haven't spoken about Trump in a long time, but this is a really interesting story. Donald Trump confirmed this week that he secretly swapped planes after leaving a NATO summit in Turkey due to a possible Iranian assassination threat. Speaking to reporters on Tuesday, he said something which I will play momentarily when my screen is up. Here we are. He said this. Okay, well, we'll see if we can get that clip up. But the Washington Post revealed that after the president had publicly boarded Air Force One, the US president was covertly smuggled into a catering truck and then moved to a different military aircraft. Meanwhile, over 100 aides, officials and reporters remained on the flight, raising questions about whether he knowingly put them at risk. Is this usual practice?
Okay, let me just be... The assassination threat is not funny, right? That's not what I'm saying is funny. It's the image of Donald Trump in a catering, in one of these like plane catering trolleys. It's in my mind, it's the trolley that they bring food around that he got put in and snuck out. That's how I choose to believe it, and no one can convince me otherwise.
Do you know who he's totally copied with that? Taylor Swift. Because do you know how she got snuck onto the stage at the Eras tour every single night in the cleaning cart?
Why would she? Isn't it her
but
show?
She wants to go. She has the way she has to come out so she can go up through the stage, which is her entrance.
Right. So that people in the crowd can't see her.
Yeah,
right.
And she came out in the cleaning cart, and soon fans clocked onto this to the point where at the end, towards the end of the Eras tour, when everyone was looking for the cleaning cart, when this like poor man wheeling out this cleaning, everyone would go like, yeah, because they knew she was in there.
Yeah.
So he's copied Taylor Swift.
So this is
Let's see if I can play this clip. No, I just can't play it. Never mind. So, okay, Ali, is it usual practice?
No. First of all, in order for the Secret Service to have moved him and covertly smuggled him into a different military aircraft, the threat must have been deemed as credible, which is quite concerning if you're the Americans. So the Iranians have the ability, if this is true, for a credible assassination threat on the United States president. Didn't he leave Marco Rubio behind?
Did he?
Yeah, I think Marco Rubio was on the plane. The plane that he was smuggled out of.
Well, look, I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, like, okay, if there was a credible assassination threat on the president's life, could they have not just, like, have waited, like maybe waited for another plane, wait for it to go, I don't know. But then I was thinking, well, I guess it makes sense that they have to secretly move him, and it can't, because if there was a credible threat, they would just wait, they would have the intelligence, so it has to be really top secret. But it's the fact that this other plane was just full of like loads of officials, reporters and aides, almost like they were bait.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. If you're little Marco, you're fuming.
Yeah.
You're like, bro, I could have there's more than one car, I could have got in with you. Do you not think?
Do we think that this is something that's happened before? Either with Donald Trump or other presidents.
So I had always assumed that Air Force One is this like crazy advanced aircraft where the president's section maybe is protected. And I'm just trying to figure out, it's probably not helpful, but it's trying to figure out what kind of threat would require you to covertly move him into not Air Force One, but a different airplane. Because presumably it's then you're worried about someone who's either on the flight.
Yeah, I mean, I guess because he was flying back from Turkey, he was crossing airspace that could have had people firing drones.
It's all European airspace, though, right? He'd fly across Europe over the North Atlantic into America, I would assume.
Are there long-range enough drones?
I mean,
in that
it depends who you believe. Netanyahu would tell you, yes, that the Iranians would have that level. But did you see the Iranian response to this, by the way? So the Iranians said that they have no need to assassinate Donald Trump because he is destroying America from the inside, and so he.
Do you know what? I obviously would never defend the Iranian regime, but
sometimes
they do keep getting in with their zingers.
It's their one-liners.
Okay. I mean, nothing surprises me about Donald Trump, and I think this just fits with that vibe. I mean, it's a bit like when it's not the same, but it's a little bit like when Boris Johnson hid in the fridge to avoid questions over it over Brexit or the NHS?
It was over the NHS. Yeah. Right at the beginning of the campaign, I remember he ran into the fridge and didn't come.
It's just the cowardice of populists, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to our final story of the week. Leaked training videos reveal Reform UK is warning its activists not to drink and tweet, and to treat every social media post like a press release, because, as the materials say, its own members are the biggest threat to reform. The videos also appear to tell canvassers to ignore no junk mail signs and leaflet houses anyway. They're also told to avoid wearing any party branding while doing so, to stay unidentifiable.
I mean, it's whoever's done this audit for reform is doing a good job.
I think it's Byline Times investigation. Right. Yeah,
they are the biggest threat to reform.
I see, the internal audit. So there's two separate things here. The first is what this tells us about the level of trust and integrity, and I guess the quality and calibre of Reform UK's own activists, that the party basically has to hold their hands and treat them like your drunk aunt on Facebook, and be like, hey, maybe we don't go on Facebook after we've had a drink, because you might end up upsetting some people. I mean, it doesn't say a lot about how Reform views its own people, right?
Yeah.
The second is more about Reform's campaigning tactics, which we already knew were a little bit dodgy. We knew that in Makerfield, some of the leaflets, when that was going on, was they were playing a bit dirty. But I mean, what do you make of this?
No, there is something to be. I think it's interesting that they've told their activists not to avoid wearing any branding while they're out on the doorstep, and to ignore the junk mail signs. It's the exact opposite advice we give to our activists, that you should wear your party branding, because it's important for folks to know why you're knocking on their door, right? Just in terms of a safety issue, if you're like two people coming up to a door, it might frighten some people, and it lets them know, and you're open about where you are. There is a bit of disagreement generally in politics about whether you ignore the no junk mail sign. I tend to, if I approach a door that says no soliciting, no junk mail, anything I just tend not to knock it up, because presumably the person put that there consciously. Also, they're going to get your direct mail leaflets anyway, so they're going to get some leaflets anyway. But this is really, really interesting, and the reason I think it's interesting is because I think Reform are very alive to the risks that they have, their own risks.
Yeah.
Vetting was for a long time the biggest problem. Their candidates were a problem, let alone the ordinary members. And so I think generally this is probably good advice. Although I wouldn't say don't drink and tweet. I would say just don't tweet. And don't drink, probably.
I mean, the thing is,
although maybe that's too much Sharia
Twitter
law.
or X or whatever it is now is just such a cesspit. It doesn't even matter if you drink or tweet. It's just going to fall into the abyss of horrific, disgusting things that people say on that website.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I'd have to drink to go on X.
So you've been...
Because it's so awful on there.
You've been off for a while, right?
Yeah.
How are you feeling about it?
Good.
Do you ever have to go on to see stuff?
Can I just say to you, and I've said this to you before, I genuinely believe Rupert Lowe is a product of X. And I mean that in the sense that I don't think that people who aren't on X really know who he is.
Really?
And I believe he only exists in the sphere of X. And I think a little bit like a tree falling in the woods, if you took Rupert Lowe out of X...
Yeah, there's nothing.
Would he even exist anymore?
No.
Would he make a sound?
So
if you took him out of X, would he make a sound?
No, the answer to that is...
Because Elon Musk is also...
He's pumping artificial support behind Rupert Lowe.
If I was Prime Minister for a day and I could just do something super decisive and...
shut down X.
I'd just shut down X. And Andy Burnham should shut down X, because honestly, that is where the far right is amalgamating and growing and feeding itself. But it's also like a funhouse mirror. It distorts reality. So people on X think other people are feeling the way they see these right-wing nut jobs. And most people in Britain aren't.
Yeah, and so much of it is bots as well. It's not real.
Well, and you know, all the riots, there's been research to show that if you track those accounts, most of them are not even from the UK.
Yeah.
So I would say shut it down.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you say most people who aren't on X don't know him, do you know? Is there a lot of people that aren't on X, or they're just not in that algorithm? And
It's
so
just not on X. Like a lot of people. I mean, X is used a lot, and it's used by a specific type of person, a specific type of voter, right?
Yeah.
So I think it swells Rupert Lowe up and it makes him bigger and bigger, so people on X, and then it brings him a little bit into the outside world. But I think if you cut off X, you cut off his source of power.
Yeah.
Not only is he stopped being spoken about, he's stopped being amplified. And most people who
you'll end up in like a free speech debate that you don't want to be in.
Whatever, I'll get into. I'm not bothered.
I like a doctrine of leadership. Might vote for you.
My line is no free speech for Nazis. Anyway, not saying Rupert Lowe is, but I'm just saying I don't really care about free speech for the far right. They're all going to come for me, aren't they? Oh, well. But then they'll say we're not far right, we're just right. In which case, I'm not talking about you. So it's fine.
Elon Musk has been. I saw a tweet of his the other day where he was talking about Hitler wasn't far right, he was far left, and he got community noted on his own platform.
Was this Elon Musk?
Yeah.
Oh God. Okay. All right. Well. Anyway.
He's just such an idiot.
He's such an idiot. Right. That is it for the week Unwrapped. Coming up, we're going to talk about Andy Burnham on his so-called listening tour of the UK, and we'll discuss with his new policy measures. Listen to me, Andy. Right. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're listening to Politics Uncensored with me, Zoe Grunewald.
And me, Ali Milani. I was totally ready for that. And me, Ali Milani.
Yeah, we were so on the ball then. Andy Burnham is back from his holiday. This week he's been touring the UK. Where did he go on his holiday?
I don't actually know. Can I talk about this holiday thing quickly?
Yeah.
Do you mind?
Yeah.
When did this become a thing? Like, people started attacking. It's very American. I got told off. It's really funny. So I tweeted, ironically, that we need to stop this Americanization nonsense of our politics, because people were like, why is he going on holiday? Because it's a big thing in America. The right will often say, why did Obama go on so many holidays, or why did Biden go on so many holidays, and vice versa. And I don't remember this ever being a thing in British politics about us being like, why is the Prime Minister going on holiday? And I tweeted that we need to stop this Americanization nonsense. And then the first reply with the biggest likes was a picture of me and AOC, just as a reply of we need to stop this Americanization of our politics.
Shit, they did like, you.
Yeah,
maybe I should get back on X. That is good
you've
banter.
Done me. But it annoyed me. Why? Like, people are like, he's only been in the job for 2 weeks. He ran in a whole. I mean, I'm not defensive of that. He ran in a whole election. Right, he came back to Parliament. He was mayor before then. He's been working.
Yeah. No, I agree. And also, he's a Labour Prime Minister. Labour. The clue is in the name. He's all about workers' rights and rest. I actually think it's very important that the Prime Minister sets the tone of, I have worked very, very hard. I'm entitled to a holiday. I'm going to take one, as should you all. Take your holiday. The only thing I would say is, I do think he's been a little bit quiet over the drought and the climate change we are experiencing.
Well, he had a meeting at Cobra yesterday.
Yes. Well, we're going to get into...
We're going to ban disposable barbecues. I don't know if you heard this. Have you heard this?
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. It's
Do you ever use them?
Probably good. No, I have in the past. Okay, let's just bring in this section then in a slightly more formalised way, because we're going to talk about all these things. But he is now touring the UK, part of his plan to bring back hope to every postcode. One of the problems he wants to tackle is the state of Britain's high streets. He's pledged to give local councils more power to stop betting shops and vape shops from taking over. Here is what he had to say on social media.
Do you ever look at your high street now and think, who actually asked for this? Another vape shop, another betting shop, an adult gaming centre, another dodgy business opening where something useful used to be. It's just not on, and I am doing something about it. I'm giving local people and councils more control over what opens on their high streets and more powers to rein in the unwanted businesses that just aren't good for our communities. For too long, Westminster stood by and watched as the life drained from high streets across Britain. That changes now. This government is committed to restoring our high streets and bringing back hope.
What do we make of this policy, Ali? Basically more power to councils to stop those sort of specific shops, and you and I can picture them, that just seem to pop up indefinitely on high streets across the UK.
Yeah, they really fuck me off, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, I am old enough, as I think you are probably, to remember the last time high streets were like buzzing.
Yeah.
Before the wave of like online shopping, when like shopping, it was an experience where you went out.
Yeah.
And it's just so sad now. You go to any like poorer part, working class part of the UK, and it's just fucking Ladbrokes. Oh, maybe not say names. Let's start that again. And it's just like betting shop, vape shop, betting shop, Greg's, betting shop, vape shop.
Nothing wrong with Greg's. I grew up in West Yorkshire, and there's a town in West Yorkshire which is famous for having 2 Greg's next door to each other.
Oh, really? Why was that necessary? I saw, by the way, can I tell you, in Makerfield, I saw a drive-through Greg's.
Yeah, there used to be a drive-through Greg's near my house.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It was like it was a very weird.
See, like
I felt like I was
down
being
south,
inducted into
down south, you've got drive-through Starbucks,
Yes.
but up north you've got drive-through Greg's.
drive-through Gales.
Don't
Middle.
don't say that.
North London.
Yeah.
And another fun fact, in Hampstead, it's not that far from where I live, although I don't live in Hampstead, right? So let's get that straight. They once opened a McDonald's, and the local community kicked off so much that it was going to bring the wrong kinds of people to Hampstead. They had to shut it down.
Oh my God.
Right. Now compare that to things like and the thing about these vape shops and betting shops, and I don't actually include barber shops in this, even though like Farage often does, because I think barber shops are very, very different. You never see anyone in them.
No.
Have you ever seen anyone in one of these vape shops?
No,
Right.
I haven't.
They make the high street look shit.
Yeah.
They are suspicious to say the least. There's no one ever in them, right? What's the point of them?
And presumably this all goes back to that very good interview we had with the guy from oh my God. Well, we had a really good interview about who owns London.
Yes, yeah.
And basically the amount of real estate that is just kind of owned as shell, because people can just buy it up, put money through it. You're not really sure if it's dodgy or not. You're not really sure if it's legal or not. And it's these American sweet shops that you see popping up all over London, or not just London now, online, like as you say, high streets across the UK with extortionately expensive chocolate in
that no one ever goes in.
No one ever buys. Yeah. Same with these vape shops, and I think betting shops as well. They've become betting shops have been a bit of a blind spot for Labour actually, because obviously there is quite a lot of money from gambling companies.
And people do go in them, but it's no coincidence that there's more betting shop in poorer areas where more vulnerable people live.
Yes, absolutely. Do you think? I mean,
but can I say this is part of, I think, the Burnham doctrine that I can get behind. Yes, you solve. I mean, I don't want to not call these big problems, but yes, you solve the big problems, right? Iran and the US and Israel, Russia and Ukraine, like North Sea drilling, all this kind of big ideas. But also go after the little ones as well, like the small, like fill the potholes, clean up the high streets, close these betting shops and vape shops that aren't real, and people will see a real impact in their community. Like if my high street is cleaner, the potholes are filled, and it's not full of these shit like vape shops, I'm happier. Yeah. Right. And do you know what? It goes in line. Here's what we'll do. Here's what we should do, and you'll back this because I know you feel so powerfully about this. This idea of happiness in society, right? Shut down all the vape shops and replace them with cafes that can stay open late.
Okay, you're completely right. But here's the problem: those sorts of businesses are finding it very, very expensive.
Yeah.
And are shutting down at an alarming rate. So yes, I agree. Get rid of the betting shops and the vape shops, but how can we ensure they're replaced with viable? Local, independent businesses.
I think there's different measures that Andy's spoken about and explored. Cutting business rates, he's already done for like pubs and stuff, which is important. My view is that the rise in national insurance that Labour did was wrong on employers. It particularly hurt them. But I'm sure there's a raft of measures that we can introduce that will make life easier for them. Business rates is probably where you want to be looking, because I think that's probably a painful.
Do you know what I think? You know what I wish for? 4-day week. Give people more time back, more time to spend in their community. Yeah. Cafes would be busier. Obviously, it's not a silver bullet, and there's loads of nuance missing. But I think, that people... So I was thinking about this. Okay, one of the challenges facing independent businesses and smaller businesses across the UK, retail businesses, is the fact that people just buy stuff online. It's quicker, it's more convenient, it's often cheaper. Just get it all from Amazon. So perhaps we need some kind of proper tax on Amazon that goes back into collects money, goes back into our high street, some kind of online shopping levy. right?
That's ring fenced and then given back into.
Okay, but then they pass costs on to consumers. Well, what if you let ring fence it on profits? You know, and there still would probably be some crossover. But what do you do? Well, actually, maybe that's a good thing because it stops people realize it's not necessarily cheaper to buy online.
Yeah,
so they go start shopping in their community again.
Yeah, because
but then they have an issue with time. People don't have time to go shopping in their community.
Yes, they do.
Well, this is what people say.
That's bullshit.
But I think if you start pushing and enshrining flexible working, core hours, 4-day week, you know, give people more time to spend in their communities, you'd see high streets come alive again.
Yeah, I don't buy the thing that they don't have enough. Actually, part of what's actually hurt high streets as well is the fact that Amazon can drop off your parcel the next day. Part of the reasons why you went shopping in person was you wanted to browse, which you can do online now anyway, but also you get it then and there. You can go home with it, which Amazon can basically do. I mean, Argos will deliver on the same day, I think.
It's funny. I mean, I don't. How often do you shop in person versus
quite
online?
a lot?
Yeah,
quite a lot. Although I never, I don't really buy my own clothes anyway. But like, never with clothes. I find it. My wife will often do this, and I know loads of people do this, where they buy clothes and then if it doesn't fit, you can send it back. I never really do that. But do you not spend much time in shops anymore?
I go. So now since I've started working for myself, got more time, I will just go shopping now.
Nice.
I have more time to do it, so I do.
Do you enjoy it?
I really enjoy it.
More so than when you were online?
I'm way more responsible with my money. You know, I actually think before I buy things, I can try things on. If I'm buying someone a present, I will always go shopping for it in person. I will never ever do it online. But that is because I have given myself the luxury of time.
Yeah.
A lot of people, say if you're a mum working shifts in a hospital, 3 kids, I can understand why online appeals.
Yeah, but yes, you can, and no one wants to get rid of that, but you also want to give them the time. This is why your 4-day working week. You want them to give the time to go shopping because it can be an enjoyable experience.
This is one of the economic benefits of a 4-day week that is like not discussed or held up when people talk about the economic negatives of a 4-day week, which is that people get more time back.
Yeah.
So they go and spend it in their community. And I think if you want to look at why we've become so isolated and we've had so much community erosion, and people are feeling fragmented, and the high streets are, I think, in many ways a symptom as well as a example of this. I think trying to reframe people's relationship with work and their autonomy and giving them more time back with themselves and their loved ones is part of that. And I think it's very hard conceptually to go after, but it just occurred to me that part of this also is about trying to get people, like you say, the politics of happiness and well-being. And I think this is linked to that.
Yeah. Going like for one of the things I do go actual physically shopping for is comic books, for example. I like going into the store, the smell. Yeah,
it's a whole
being
experience.
able to chat to my guy about what's come out and what hasn't. Yeah, it's a whole enjoyable experience. Whereas if I just log on to Amazon and it gets delivered to my house, you lose all of that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. I think that's totally right. How do you think Andy's getting on then? Let's talk quickly about the barbecue stuff.
Yeah. So the PM is looking at whether we need to ban disposable barbecues. This comes after we've had the 5th consecutive record heat wave this year. Just some really, really alarming facts. The Met Office has admitted that these heat waves are as a result of climate change. The scientists at the Met Office have said it's a result of climate change. We had 2.7 thousand heat-related deaths in May and June. Wow. And we've had over 1,000 wildfires. I think it's 1,027 wildfires in the UK. And these wildfires are often started by things like disposable barbecues. And so the government is looking at whether banning disposable barbecues as a result of the wildfires that are raging across the UK is something that's necessary. Now, I know folks will say, will kick off about like one person misusing a disposable barbecue shouldn't mean that we all ban them. But the reality is we're in this moment because for decades, folks have refused to deal with the issue of climate change. And people like Richard Tice and Lee Anderson and Nigel Farage, who continue to advocate for more drilling, for example, it's insane to me that people aren't putting the two things next to each other. They're not putting their anger at disposable barbecues and things like that next to record heat waves, 2.7 thousand heat-related deaths in June and May, wildfires around the country. I think, is it 2/3 of the country's in drought?
Yeah.
and not looking at, well, we got here because all these predominantly older politicians haven't acted.
Yeah.
And it's only going to get worse. Like, it's only going to get worse. And it's remarkable to me.
I think it felt a little bit alarming when we hadn't really heard from Burnham last week, when all of this was really, at the forefront of a lot of people's minds. But I think he is hopefully going to be a prime minister who listens and responds to the country. And I just think this is an issue that can't be ignored.
You just cannot,
no,
in my view, and I think this is where we're going to end up disagreeing with me and Andy. You cannot open up the North Sea to more oil drilling, given the context of where we are looking at an absolute catastrophe in our lifetime. Climate change has always been presented as it's a problem for our children and our children's children. That's not true. It's a problem right now.
Oh, yeah, it's 36 degrees outside now while we're
It's
recording.
36 degrees outside.
Yeah.
The country's on fire. People are dying as a result of the heat. There's a drought across the country. And this is just like...
Do you think he will open up the North Sea?
I don't know. I think maybe. Because of the cost of living stuff, the argument has been that, it'll make energy cheaper. But I once had a university lecturer tell me when it comes to climate change versus money, for example, when people say, we should drill for more money, he used the phrase, try counting your money while holding your breath, right? Which has always stuck with me.
Yeah.
Which it may be true that it makes cost of living easier and energy easier. But if none of us can breathe, and if the country's on fire and in drought, what does that matter?
I'm not sure it does make the cost of living easier. Actually, fundamentally, I'm not sure it does.
One of these oil guys tried to lobby me in Westminster not long ago,
Oh, what did
they
want
found out
from
that I was
you?
working with Andy, and they grabbed me and spent 15 minutes trying to convince him to do more oil drilling. It's a little guy in a suit. Looks like an oil. Looks like an oil.
Look like an oil slick.
Yeah.
Okay. It's probably about all we've got time for on this topic now. After the break, we're going to be talking to Antonia May Cross, who is Director of Communications and Campaigns at justice reform charity Revolving Doors. Who's going to talk us through the early prisoner release scheme and why it's still dominating the headlines. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're listening to Politics Uncensored with me, Zoe Grunewald.
And me, Ali Milani.
So Andy Burnham's plans to pause the early release of some prisoners have been making headlines this week. The PM is facing public pressure from police and the family of PC Andrew Harper, whose killers were convicted of manslaughter and are due to leave prison in January. Shortly after becoming Prime Minister, Burnham announced that people convicted of rape, serious child sex offences and grooming offences would be exempt from early release, but manslaughter convictions were not included. The government is set to release 5,000 offenders later this year to create space in overcrowded prisons. Meanwhile, Reform UK have said it would tackle overcrowding by sending foreign offenders abroad to serve their sentences. With prisons already close to capacity and ministers warning they could run out of space as soon as October, how would the government balance the need to relieve pressure on the prison system without compromising public safety? Well, we're joined now by Antonia May Cross, who is Director of Communications and Campaigns at Revolving Doors, which is a justice reform charity. Antonia, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Can you just tell our listeners sort of why this has suddenly become a flashpoint? It feels like we don't really hear anything about prisons. And then every now and then there is oh my God, it's overcrowding, we need to do something. Why is this?
You know what? It's really interesting when you say that we don't really hear much as a public, because as someone who's worked in, justice and criminal legal system and homelessness for 15 years now, the prison population crisis comes up every 3 months and has been going on for decades. During Tony Blair's tenure, they actually hired a barge, just like, the Biffy barge for initially for immigrants, where they put prisoners on. It was a prison called like HMP Wharf. This has been going on for a while. In 2024, I was asked by City AM to write an essay about why early release schemes were so controversial. So this is actually probably about the 10th time I've been kindly invited on to talk about this. So there's two things I want to answer your question with. Is one, this is not new. The prison population crisis is a multi-generational problem. Even Margaret Thatcher had to chat about it. And two, it's really interesting when you say when the public come into contact with it via the media, is because we tend to see prisons as this thing that isn't really part of society. They're like this other thing. And we only ever hear about them when they're in crisis, which is kind of a shame, because I would really like people to engage more with the prospect that, our criminal legal system is there in its current form. It is a public service. We talk about our NHS, quite rightly so. And I wish we were talking about our legal system with the same type of, vigor and the same type of enthusiasm before it gets to crisis. So this has been going on a long time. prisons do not work. People know this. The crisis is really important because I think it gets to people's emotional heart. It feels quite scary. When you read the news headlines, you can feel quite emotional. And I really understand why important justice for victims comes to the forefront of the headlines. And I guess it's really interesting from a news cycle to kind of pick out those quite traumatic and quite, scary individual cases and really make it like a moral argument. But the moral argument that we've been kind of talking about for decades now has in part led us down this road. The context of the prison crisis is that it's not just more people committing crime and going to prison. It's decades of underinvestment, poor policy tweaks, centuries of this populist idea of what's justice and what's deserved, leading to increased prison sentences, and ultimately just a failure to even recognize how we can prevent people going into prison or stop them going back into prison. So there's a lot going on there. Let me know what you'd like me to give you more context on, particularly.
Antonia, I want to ask you about, I've been talking about this topic for a couple of weeks, a lot, particularly in the media. And I want to present it like this. So at our house, we have a couple of drawers that we just put things in that I want to forget about, right? So like old laptops and old phones, I just don't want it out of the way, I put it there. Prisons feels politically the same way in terms of the public, right? There are criminals that let's just put them in prisons and get them out of sight, out of mind, and don't worry about it, right? And what ends up happening, the public conversation, it's very easy for politicians like me to go on press and act tough guy, right? So put more people in prisons, put them in for longer, and the public lap it up. But the reality, that's probably how we reached here. So I want to ask first, just generally, do you think we hand out too many custodial sentences in this country? Do we send too many people to prisons on crimes that shouldn't have custodial sentences?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer that in two ways. In short, yes. As the Director of Communications and Campaigns for Revolving Doors, we particularly focus on people with short prison sentences not getting short prison sentences. So I would argue that prison sentences under 12 months for lower level repeat offending crimes, they're like a mixture of shoplifting and kind of exaggerated kind of theft offences. And there are some muddier things about kind of lower level drug crime. I would argue that those people are best placed not in prison. We know the evidence shows that they are disruptive sentences. All they do is cut people off from family, cut people off from money, cut people off from housing, and then plonk them back out. And they just kind of go round and round and round. They don't keep people safer. They don't keep neighborhoods safe.
The argument some folks might make then is, though, that removes the punitive element of prisons, right? That it's not just about rehabilitation, but it's also about punishment. And if they're repeat offenders and we're not punishing them, why wouldn't they offend again and again?
Because I would argue that it's due to unmet health and social needs. The punishment is that they are already living in a society where their needs are completely unmet. Often people who are particularly involved in lower retail crime are there because of, we call it acquisitive crime, crimes that were, because they're funding a drug addiction, crimes of homelessness, crimes of poverty. I would argue that the punitive nature of society is already there. They're just at the acute end of it. I mean, we also know that people who have small offences under 12 months, they're most likely to reoffend. Whereas the reason why you get these kind of emergency measure early release schemes is because people who are at the far end, who have an offence that has been more longer term, they are less likely to reoffend. People who have been in prison over 5 to 7 years have, the punitive element works. They often come out and go, never again. That is the reality. They are less likely to reoffend. So at both ends of the spectrum there, we know that these measures kind of have a point. And I probably just to challenge you as well, it's interesting when we hear about early release schemes that we're letting people out early. We have always let people out to have served some of their sentence in the community. So I like to challenge the wording of what it means early release. People often think the punitive element isn't there because they're free or their sentence has been reduced. That is just really not what's happening here. People have always had the ability to serve their sentence in the community, and that was fought for because it helped neighborhoods and communities be safer, because we were able to kind of keep people. You'll hear Shabana Mahmood use the phrase prisons in the community. These are people released and on license, because the aim was that you were supposed to kind of enable, encourage, and, you know, support people to get jobs and education and training. So people aren't released and then free. Quite the opposite. They are, you know, then given structure, well, supposed to be given structured support within the community so that they become, you know, members of society. So it's interesting when you relate prisons to being punitive, because I would argue that community sentences are equally as tough. They also work better.
Antonia, I want to ask you about Andrew Harper and the government's decision to potentially intervene in the release of his killers. Obviously, killers convicted of manslaughter were not exempted from early release, and that caused a huge amount of public outrage. And obviously that case was particularly horrific, and you can understand why people feel very strongly about it. But I wonder if you have a view on the idea that the government can intervene if it wants to on matters of criminal justice, and if you are worried about how, because it seems to me that this story has an almost unlimited supply of name and face cases, right, that people will sympathise with. Everybody who is going to see that they're, you know, the person who affected them, every victim who's going to see that the perpetrator or whoever it was affected them might be up for early release. Of course, that is going to bring up all sorts of very difficult feelings for the victims. Do you worry that we've almost opened a Pandora's box now of, well, what my case could be exceptional, just like the family of Andrew Harper's?
Yeah, so I mean, two ways to take that is it's really, individual cases have always been pulled out by the media for extremities, and I think that people think that the public are really in favor of these type of like emotional kind of responses, and that's not quite true. There's a bit of a muddier reality there, where, you know, under David Court's Secretary of State leadership, so at the end of his Conservative tenure, the Public Accounts Committee was able to do a piece of research with a cool organization called Involve UK, where the public, it was really made clear that the public, when they're told the reality of individual cases, they often then agree with the lesser sentencing. So take the PC Harper case, totally emotive. I can really understand why people would see that as an element of like justice, particularly as someone serving a public service as a policeman. But the, you know, the knotty reality is that it's, you know, the man convicted of murder is not up for early release. The two people who were the passengers in the car, who were aged 18 to 19, where they suppose that they didn't know he was attached to the car. I mean, that's awful, the dynamics, but this is a manslaughter case where these people have served 7 to 8 years. And I think that the more you get into the granular detail, the more people start to understand the trickier nuances of these things. I truly believe that if we want to think, you know, that the responsibility of being in a society and community, and the responsibility of politics, is that we're supposed to make decisions on behalf and the benefit of the public. For me, I see that as justice to victims and the benefit to wider society. I would consider that our criminal legal system as a public service should consider interpreting that as reducing reoffending and reducing crime. We know that prisons do not do that. They do not save future victims. They do not stop women and children being hurt. But what we do know it does do that is investments earlier on in society. You know, the evidence is demonstrably clear that when we invest in things like housing, you know, in inclusive education, public health, they stop people both ends of the spectrum. They intervene before people commit crime going into prison. And when people are released from prison, they stop them reoffending. So when you get people like Reform UK saying that they want to kind of be more punitive, or they want to have all these kind of policy decisions, I would want to ask them, what is your aim here? Is it less victims? Is it a benefit to wider society? Then we need to consider that prisons are not the answer to that.
No, I think Antonia, I think their aims are more votes. I don't think it's actually solving the crisis. I want to ask you about something you just said there, but I have two questions for you really. One is a little bit more simple. Is there a difference in gender? Because from the figures that I saw, of the 3,000 women in prison, 2,000 are there for non-violent crimes, right? So is there a way to open up space just in that, right? The fact that, is there a difference between men and women's prisons? And then the second question I want to ask you is about the recidivism rate. I always struggle with that word, which is the number of people who reoffend when they come out of prison. It's sat at around 68%, and what I'm seeing was in 2023. So what, even once people are going to prison, the punishment isn't working because they're coming out and committing offences and going back in. So do we also need to look at rehabilitation programs once they're there? So gender and recidivism.
Yeah, so recidivism, which is more of an American term, or resettlement and reoffending, which we tend to talk about in our criminal legal system, is bad, and that is because we release people from prison with a plastic bag of belongings, a couple of quid, and nowhere to go, and no bank accounts, nothing.
But what about while they're
you're
there?
On your own now.
What kind of rehabilitation programs are there once they're there? It's about, the question I have is, do we need to do more rehabilitation while they're in prison?
Yes, but I think that you get into the kind of environment of they attempt to do that prison, then you start asking the questions, is prison punitive or rehabilitative? So if the issue is that you want prisons to be punitive, often that means that there is a less chance to do that. I think it's hard to make prisons rehabilitative. They are really poorly staffed. When you're asking for capacity and money out here, we are not currently even doing the plumbing in prisons. Reason why we've only got about 1,500 prison spaces left, and people go, why aren't they being filled? Is because they have broken loos, broken fire alarms, broken windows. We don't even do that basic stuff. When we talk about hiring prison staff that would do that rehabilitation, as you said, like offender management schemes, the other year, we got HMP 5 Wells tried to do a recruitment scheme where they got 750 people in. Within months, it was down to 260 prison staff. It is incredibly hard to staff prisons to provide that type of care. So yes, that would be nice. It's utopian. But just as it would also be really nice that when we release people, that we meet them with the support they need as well. You talk about rehabilitation schemes. Largely, at the moment, probation officers do not provide that. They often have between 70 and 90 people on their caseload. And they turn into pseudo housing officers. The biggest issue we have with poor resettlement and rehabilitation is we're releasing people into homelessness. They have nowhere to go. It's very hard to rehabilitate someone when their main concern is where they're going to sleep at night. That is just, it's really, what could they engage with beyond knowing where they're going to sleep that night? It makes it really tricky. And probation officers simply do not have the resources to do that for every individual on their caseload. We have nowhere to send people. And then to gender, I would argue that there is a gender dynamic here. I would say that you should look at organisations such as Women in Prison, who are now really pro-abolition, and Level Up campaign that have been fighting for this for years. Women are primarily in prison on a very different, we call it criminogenesis, so what leads them to prison. Women are often there for very different reasons of committing crime. And often, again, as I mentioned earlier, when you talk to the public about individual cases of women, the overwhelming feeling is for any person, that woman should not be in there. I would argue that we should release and stop, predominantly women going into prison.
And Antonia, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Unfortunately, that is all we have time for. We'll hopefully speak to you again soon. Thank you. That was Antonia May Cross, Director of Communications and Campaigns at Revolving Doors. Fascinating. There's so many things in the prison system that clearly just are not fit for purpose, and I think Antonia really hit the nail on the head, which is essentially this is far deeper than the sharp end of the criminal justice system that we're seeing.
It's also just impossible to have a reasonable debate on prisons in this country without...
because people just think you're being soft on criminals,
and
they still believe that deterrence works when
even though
it doesn't.
It doesn't, yeah.
Okay, well, that is it from Politics Uncensored today. Join us next Thursday at 5 p.m. when we unwrap the week's political talking points.
You can stay up to date with the show by following at Politics Uncensored UK on social media, where you can find me at Ali Manali Live.
And you can find me at Zoe Grunewald.
If you've missed any of today's show, you can listen back and catch up at foodbarradio.com or via the Foodbar Radio app.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week for another episode of Politics Uncensored.